So these examples, we're trying to find an angle with a positive measure and an angle with a negative measure that are coterminal with each angle. Okay, so coterminal being that keyword. So remember, with coterminal, with degrees, we're going to add or subtract 360. And with radians, we're going to add or subtract 2 pi. Okay. All right. So number 5. So here I have positive 45 degrees. So if one way to find a coterminal is just to add 360. So I can go 45 plus 360, and that gets me to 405. So there's one answer. Okay. Then I can also do 45 minus 360, and that gets me negative 315. So there we go. Those are our two answers. So we have a positive angle and a negative angle that are coterminal with 45 degrees. All right, so that's how we do it. So number 6, same thing, 60 degrees, positive coterminal. I would add 360, right? Because that's a full rotation. So what I'm basically doing is I'm going counterclockwise, another full rotation, and that's getting me back to that same angle. And so that gives me positive 420. And then I want to do 60 minus 360, and that gets me negative 300. So those are our two values, right? One positive, one negative. Now remember, if you wanted to, you could add another 360 to 420, and you could get 780, and that would be a valid answer, right? Or you could subtract 360 from 300, you get negative 660, and that would be another coterminal angle. So there's more than one right answer on these, and so yeah, just keep that in mind. All right, just make sure you get one that's positive, one that's negative. So here now, 375, I could add 360, right? And that'll give me 735. Okay, so that's a positive one. Then if I subtract 360, 375 minus 360, the issue there is, the issue is that we get positive 15. So those aren't, we want one positive and a negative, right? And this isn't negative. So I could use that as my positive. I could use either one of these, but I still need to keep going. So I'm going to do one more iteration here. I'm going to go 15 minus 360. And now that gives me a negative, right? Negative 345. Okay, so you can either use these two as your answers, or you can use these two, right? Or you can subtract 360 again and get another negative if you wanted to, and use that one and one of the positives. All right, so sometimes if you see one that's more than 360, instead of adding 360, you could actually just subtract 360. That'll give you one positive, and then you could subtract 360 again, and that'll give you negative. Okay. All right, number 8. So here we have negative 90, and so I'm going to add 360 to get to a positive, and that gives me positive 270. Okay. And then I'm going to take negative 90 and I'm going to subtract 360, and that'll get me another negative. So it'll be negative 450 degrees. Okay, so those are my two answers there. All right, so that's how we find coterminal angles, just by adding or subtracting 360 as many times as we need to find whatever coterminal that we want, right? In this case, one positive and one negative. All right, now let's take a look at number 9. So here we have we have radians, excuse me. And I know that, remember, notice how we don't see any units here, but because we have a pi involved, it's implied that we're dealing with radians, okay? All right, so if I want to find something that's coterminal to 2 pi over 3, I want to add or subtract 2 pi, okay? Now, with radians, a lot of times you're going to have fractions, right? Because remember that 2 pi is one full rotation. So unless it's 1 pi, which is a half rotation, if it's anything besides a half rotation or a full rotation, you're going to have fractions. And that's okay, because we know how to deal with fractions. But just keep that in mind that when you add 2 pi here, if I do, let me do it off to the side here. So if I take 2 pi over 3 and I add 2 pi, then I have to get a common denominator, right? And so my common denominator is going to be 3, so I'm going to multiply by 3 on top and bottom. So instead of 2 pi, I'm going to end up with 6 pi over 3, right? And so what will happen is the denominator is going to stay the same. The pi will stay the same. The only thing that happens is I add whatever double the denominator is, right? I'm going to add that to the numerator. So 6 plus 2 is 8. So I get 8 pi over 3. So if you just think double the denominator and add it to the numerator, that'll give you a coterminal angle, okay? Or you can take double the denominator, 6, and subtract the numerator from it, or subtract it from the numerator, I should say. So 2 minus 6 would be negative 4, right? So we get negative 4 pi over 3, okay? So kind of mental math, if you just take double the denominator, that'll give you basically what 2 pi is in the numerator. And so then you just add or subtract that to the coefficient of pi. All right, so that's just a little shortcut for mental math if you would like, but definitely it's totally okay to show the work. All right, so now let's take a look at number 10. So I have 5 pi over 2. So I'm going to do 5 pi over 2 plus 2 pi. And actually 5 pi over 2, this is more than 2 pi, right? So instead of adding 2 pi, I'm just going to subtract 2 pi. So 2 pi would be 4 pi over 2, right? Okay, so I just double the denominator. And that's how I get the 4. And 5 minus 4 is 1. So I get 1 pi over 2. So that's one coterminal angle. And then I'm going to subtract 4 pi over 2 again. So I'm going to go pi over 2 minus 4 pi over 2 again. So 1 pi minus 4 pi is negative 3 pi over 2. So those are our two coterminal angles, one positive, one negative. All right. Okay, so go ahead and try number 11 on your own. All right, and if you got 13 pi over 6 and negative 11 pi over 6, congratulations. Well done. And so remember, all we're doing is adding and subtracting 2 pi. So you just double the denominator. So that becomes 12 pi over 6 to get 2 pi. And you just add or subtract that to the numerator, right? Okay, number 12, we have a negative angle here. No big deal. Same idea. So I'm going to take negative 3 pi over 4. And I'm going to add 2 pi. So 2 pi would be 8 pi over 4, right? So we're doubling the denominator. So that gives us 5 pi over 4 for our positive. And then we'll take negative 3 pi over 4 and subtract 8 pi over 4, which will give us negative 11 pi over 4 for our negative. All right, and that's how you find coterminal angles. You just add or subtract 2 pi to the initial angle to find a coterminal in radians, or you add or subtract 360 if you're dealing with degrees.